Hello, listeners. I'm Danny.
And I'm Taylor. We're here today to talk with fellow ONC members about the current conversations around sex. We'll be discussing the release of the Epstein files and what we think will happen moving forward, as well as Gen Z and the current culture of sex in America.
And we have Jeff here, the founder of ONC, to talk about our organization.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Hall. When these guys talk about ONC, that's short for Our National Conversation. Our website is ournationalconversation.org, and we are a platform where today's students, tomorrow's future leaders, can discuss politics without fear of having their eyeballs clawed out. We welcome Republicans, Democrats, Independents, everybody really, and we treat each other with mutual respect at all times. We discuss issues thoroughly, and we like to focus on solutions when we can. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Danny and Taylor. Have a good podcast.
Thank you, Jeff, and Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Make sure to subscribe and to like this video on YouTube and our social media pages. Now let's get into it. Some sensitive topics are going to be discussed today, but we are going to do it what we do best and open up the conversation with civil dialogue. We wanted to talk about the Epstein files today because we consider it to be a nonpartisan issue as it names many people from both political parties, including the names of two U.S. presidents, one from each political side, a multitude of times.
We first want to ask how some of you might feel about it right now with all of this information coming out.
Come on, guys. Don't everybody speak at once.
I can open up the conversation. So we have some people being accused in the Epstein files, both Donald Trump and Bill Clinton, along with several other influential people in America. These are all being named in these files. And I just kind of wanted to ask, what are some of your thoughts with the lack of action that are being taken through the FBI and the media to question all of these figures?
I know for me, it doesn't put much trust in currently what our systems are today to know that journalists who are the main questioners of our society aren't getting to I wouldn't say they might not even be getting the chance or opportunity to ask the questions to these people. Um, but if they do, they are immediately shut down, which is kind of upsetting. And then it has to do, I think, with who's being paid out and who's and the bigger influences behind a lot of these journalistic organizations, as well as our government, with so many government people being implicated in these files somewhat, and the people that back the president. It's kind of hard um, to think there is somebody to question any of these people, especially when we have put so much trust in these in our government or our government as well as the news to give us the truth.
Um, Hi, I don't know if I should introduce myself. I'm Casey Lampa. I just think, for me personally, regardless of political alignment, whether it's Democrat, Republican, any kind of third party, whether you're right leaning, left leaning, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, regardless of any of that, I just think the actions and all of the kinds of things being described in the Epstein files, the emails sent between different people, different parties, the descriptions of what kinds of things were happening to the victims, I think is just really, really saddening, really disheartening to learn, like, that kind of stuff has been happening for so long, by such powerful figures. It really makes you question. I think, those who have power and where they align themselves, not even on a political standpoint, but in more of a moral standpoint, what is and isn't wrong. And it really makes me question just how much trust you can put into even elected officials or anyone who claims to want to do better for the people of America or the planet. I feel like it makes you wonder how much they mean it.
I completely agree, especially when we look at kind of um, Trump being one of the people accused. He ran on the campaign that he was going to release these files, and a lot of people not only voted for him, but added themselves to his campaign in favor of this. And now with it coming out recently, I think it was a reporter from CNN had been brave enough to ask Trump questions about the files and his name being mentioned. And like many other times when the files brought up, he denies really his relationship at all with Epstein. He will say things um, uh, like I've never been to Epstein Island. I've never been friends with him, or we've cut off our friendship a long time after he started taking employees I had from Mar-a-Lago. But obviously, what we're seeing in evidence-wise, it looks a lot different. Yes, Epstein might have hated Trump, but it seems that you don't have to just go to Epstein Island to participate in the culture of what was happening. And uh, when he was questioned by the CNN journalist, he had basically implicated we should move on from the files now, even though these are all freshly released. And then had told her that he's never seen her smile since as long as he's known her, and she should smile more. And it just seems like it was redirecting the conversation rather than facing it and taking it head on when this is one of the biggest things I think to hit America in revelation of uh, dirty secrets of the upper class. What do you think, I guess, in response to that, do you think does anyone here think the FBI has done a good job in response to the investigation and ha the uh, accusations being as big as they are?
Can I say something? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I always think about all these agencies, FBI, DOJ, whoever. Sometimes there are a lot of people within these agencies trying to do the right thing, but with certain jobs, you have to get permission from higher. And there's that one person who's not giving the stamp of approval to investigate or something like that, because that person super, super high up has a clearance that could be revoked at any time, or they could be transferred to middle of nowhere, Kansas, where their family doesn't want to go, or something like that. So they're scared of what can happen to the rest of their career if they sort of go against the grain. So as a whole, it's I guess sad that there's not enough traction going. But sometimes it's just that one or two people who are sort of slowing up the other, 500 people who want to do the right thing.
Exactly. And I think it's makes it that much horrifying because it realizes how much power is not in the people's hands. And like you said, those people making things go slower and stopping the approval of things going through. Um, it is just a bit frightening that our somewhat uh, government that we created to be people first rather than the people in our seat in the seats because they're our representatives are taking advantage of being those representatives and using the power to protect themselves rather than the people. I'm kind of going off of what has been allowed to be released. How do people here feel about the redactions that have been made, whether it's names from the files or even photos from images? What are people's thoughts towards redactions?
Personally, I feel that the redactions are kind of worrisome, I guess would be the word. I feel that uh, if or obviously these files with how the nature of them would be heavily redacted. That's not surprising, but I personally feel that the only redaction should be uh, on like names of the victims and people who you know suffered because of the things going on in the files. I feel like anyone accused of uh, what was going on, any potential perpetrators, I feel like should not have had their names redacted. I know that there are some names that people are wondering, why was this email recipient redacted and stuff like that. I don't think that those names should be taken out because if these files are going to be released, I think they should be released either like in full or as close to as in full as possible. Because I think it's a right of the people to know who was causing harm and who uh, was allowing harm to take place. I think the heavy redactions just kind of almost, I guess, make the files being released seem a bit suspicious and incomplete. It feels like they're trying to hide things, and if they're not, I think it would have been easier to just put all of that out, all of that information, minus the victims' names out there, because you know, I just think it would cause a lot less problems for them if they were innocent, not saying for sure that anyone is guilty of anything, because obviously I don't know, and I can't say anything for sure, but I just think it's what's fair to the people for them to be able to know who was involved.
I don't think this is a partisan issue. When Donald Trump was running for president the second time, he made a big point of saying that they're going to get to the bottom of this whole Epstein thing and reveal all the files. And and then he got into office and suddenly he changed his mind. I think it's pretty obvious he doesn't want to reveal the files. And early in his administration, when he got in a big tussle with Elon Musk, Musk said, the reason Donald Trump isn't revealing the files is because he's in the files. Now, we know for sure at this point that he's in the files something like 38,000 times and that he spent a lot of time with Epstein and exchanged a lot of messages with Epstein. And so when you go back and trace the history of this thing, Pam Bondi at one time said she had all the files on her desk, including videos, and any minute now she'd be revealing all that. Well, then suddenly it didn't happen, and suddenly they were basically saying there's nothing really to see, there's nothing more to talk about, we're shutting this down. And the Republicans in Congress really stonewalled the Democrats on this, saying, no, we're not going to reveal all this stuff. Well, there was an uproar even on the Republican side. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was pure MAGA at one time, said, this isn't right. These people are victims. We should reveal all of this information where let the chips fall where they may. And there are a lot of Republicans who support that position. And finally, Congress voted overwhelmingly to reveal the files. And now here we are many months later, and we're getting it in drips and drabs. And a lot of the files are very heavily redacted. They said there were 6 million documents. We've seen three, and we're still going through that. But what about the other three? What's in there? Why didn't they reveal that too? It just, to me, feels like a huge, huge cover up. And I don't know who's guilty. And it's too bad all of this ever happened in the first place. I hope we learn from this and that powerful men in powerful positions with lots of money, stop doing stuff like this. But we'll see. But I think it's clearly the case that the people who know what's going on aren't revealing what's going on.
Yes, I completely agree. And it makes me question, after this all comes out, is anything going to change in society to hold these people accountable? Will they face any prison time? Will we have to reconstruct the way our government is to make sure that anyone accused or facing charges such as this actually is held accountable and faces the justice system? Because right now it seems that everything is slow moving. And, for example, Larry Summers, the professor at Harvard, once president of Harvard, went to class to go lecture and apologized to his class after he it was put out publicly that he exchanged multiple emails with Epstein and was very involved with Epstein. That and he apologized for it, but then he finished with saying, "Now we will continue on with the class." So and he's one of the only people I've heard actually admit and apologize for his actions with Epstein. But then he went back to normal life. I don't know what exactly movements are going to be made, but does that mean and this is a case scenario where the elite are mostly involved and people with a lot of money are mostly involved with being accused in the Epstein files of associating with Epstein and going to Epstein Island. Um, do we think that they're untouchable, and do you think we're going to do anything to change that at all?
I personally think that, it is rich people. I think that was the price of admission. If you weren't rich, you probably did not get invited to Epstein's parties or his island. Um, that was just part of the inner circle, if you will. Um, I don't know that laws will be written that will somehow make this kind of bad behavior go away. If you go back to the beginning of time, there's been sexual abuse, and it's hard to imagine human nature changing totally. But I think a smart man today with money, or even without money, would have to think twice or three times before engaging in this kind of behavior or accepting an invitation to a place like Epstein Island, because when the word gets out, which it inevitably does, you're cooked, and I think a lot of these rich guys have strong radar when it comes to self-preservation. I don't think they want the bad press. I think back in the days when they were doing this, early 2000s, it was a different era. I think this was sort of the beginning of the Me Too movement. A lot of these things that men used to do, they got away with it and nobody ever could question them. And the women who dared got hammered. It was very difficult for women to speak up. But I think more and more women are speaking up, and I think more and more men have to listen.
Yes, I agree. I think Harvey Weinstein was one of the biggest first cases where a powerful man like that faced the justice system so publicly. At least from my perspective of growing up, of what I was exposed to in media, with the Me Too movement. Uh, that it's kind of hard to see everything at a standstill because it felt like we were in a progressive time to make sure that rich, powerful men were held accountable for doing horrible, heinous things to women. Um, but the lack of action is a bit confusing, and there's a lot of internet dialogue talking about what's wrong with our generation, that we're not having a revolution about this and we're not tearing down the government. And a lot of people are saying we've been breeded to be desensitized. I mean, at least for those born in the 2000s, we were born during wartime overseas. Anything in our history books kind of talked about war and talks about people getting away with horrible things. And with the internet and what we see horrible things every day, we just have kind of treated heinous as normal. And it's but there's also this sense and lack of powerlessness from our generation because we have no influence, no reputation, and no ability to really have the power to make change to these horrible things. I wanted to hear what you guys think and what power you guys might feel and what initiative you could take to change anything that's going on right now or have any say in the way these men face justice.
I'm actually curious about that myself. And one of the questions that came up in my mind, to Casey's point about some of the ways that the information was being redacted and how, um, instead of having uh, content redacted specifically uh, for victims' identities, which is an important law for many reasons. Um, but why there's missing information regarding possible perpetrators. Yes, you know, innocent until proven guilty, but there is no, um, as far as my knowledge, there's no uh, legal standing or justification that has come out from the DOJ regarding why there are redactions involving the perpetrators. Because with, like we've already talked about, like with Harvey Weinstein, you know, this information isn't. Uh, it should be made available to the public, and especially when it's relating to our government and people in power, especially thinking about um, even just general rhetoric when you have voters who are you know they want um, they want married and faithful and good moral um, representatives for our country. Yet here we have something, we're not even talking about just general ethics. We're talking about felonies against children. This is such a serious crime. And I think it needs to be taken as seriously as that. And so, as far as um, what we can do, um, I'm not sure, but my mind wants to ask, you know, how is there a way that we can, maybe petition to the Department of Justice as far as receiving information that I feel that we are entitled to?
Holly, I thought you brought up a really good point. As the people, I feel like we are called to stop treating the exposure as kind of like our finish line for this. Like, we already hear it, but moving forward, it's not just about the awareness. It's if we just leave it at that, it becomes just another regular news cycle. Our real action looks like shifting the pressure downstream, and that could be asking who's enabled, right? Who's settling quietly, who keeps funding these things, who's staying silent. By doing all of these things, I think that truly supporting the investigation, like in a journalistic way, we are able to like move forward questioning these institutions instead of obsessing over this kind of like story that's going on over the individual like villains of this when we see these powerful figures rebranded without taking full accountability. On a personal level, it's also about refusing the not my problem kind of thing and just not hearing the story out, like that instinct of it. Call out the minimalization when we kind of hear it, not to amplify these rumors and other stuff that's going on, and like not dismiss it when we have these survivors that may not want to speak out about these things. We need to still be engaged after all of these headlines like kind of fade over.
I completely agree. It's rep the fact that it's just reputation currently damaged is not punishment enough. Just as naming names is not a consequence. Jail time is. I mean, with all the names being mentioned, I've seen this quoted on the internet. Only one woman is facing jail time, and all these men walk free in their average daily lives. That being Ghislaine Maxwell, horrible person, but she is the only one facing jail time. I mean, we talk about Prince Andrew and the horrible photos that came out of him and his affiliation. He was stripped of his title, sure, but is he facing jail time? For any of that? It doesn't make any sense that just saying their names is the biggest part of this outrage. What should be the outrage is what the justice system is going to do to make sure these people are held accountable. And then I wanted to ask, basically, has anyone here kind of seen the photos or want to talk or share about their thoughts towards photos that have been released and of specific people? Um, Specifically, maybe Bill Clinton, who was a US president, or Trump, because I just think that it's crazy that both of them have sat in as the diplomat of the United States, our main representative, and have been some of the closest ties through photos to Epstein. Just wanted to get everyone's thought on that.
I don't think it can come as any big surprise that Bill Clinton would be included in this. Donald Trump too. I mean, they both have reputations going way back for being horn dogs and womanizers, and Bill Clinton in his first administration lied under oath, saying he didn't have an affair with that woman who was Monica Lewinsky, his intern. He was in his 40s, I think, at the time. She was in her 20s. I mean, there was a big power imbalance there, and whose life really got wrecked as a result of that whole episode. It was really Monica Lewinsky. When you listen to her talk, she became a pariah. Nobody wanted to talk to her. It was hard for her to find jobs. All of her life, people have been laughing about her and talking about her on social media. Bill Clinton went on to run the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative with Hillary, and they've taken in millions and millions and millions of dollars to run their nonprofit. I'm sure he's embarrassed. I'm sure to this day, he wishes that had never happened. But he was asked not too long ago, "Did you ever apologize to Monica Lewinsky?" And he basically said, "No, I didn't." And Trump, he never apologizes for anything ever, for any reason. So I don't know. I mean, Trump was accused of rape in the department store. That woman won a huge judgment against him. He's still appealing it. Um, you know, all kinds of stories going way back on this guy. So I don't remember what you said, Danny. That got me going down this path. But there's no doubt about it that powerful men for years have been getting away with this stuff forever. And now it's a new era. I think it's going to be harder and harder for people to get away with things, and especially now with video phones and recordings, and we live in a digital age. I have a feeling that even if the FBI never reveals all of the stuff, there's probably somebody inside there who's got it all on a thumb drive, and one day we're going to know a lot more than we do today.
I completely agree. And like you said, it's just the future is gonna be the test of time of when all this stuff will come out. Nothing is uh, certain, but we have a higher chance as technology keeps advancing, and as more of this gets exposed, that we will find the full truth. And I guess I'll say finally on this topic, acts as taxpayers, funding our government and a lot of our academic institutions, either through um, paying property taxes to state schools or even paying tuition to universities. Uh, how do you feel, kind of, as we are funding these people into positions of power, that we feel that we need to change um, salaries and or maybe even a level of uh, kind of following of these people when they're in these positions to make sure they do not step out of their bounds of position and power to do inappropriate things like this? Do you think that we get any say or sway on kind of actually having access to their constantly to their whereabouts?
As taxpayers, we definitely have the right to expect more accountability from others when we are giving our money publicly to the law enforcement, to court, to like the government and their institutions. As a people, we deserve to know what's going on in the system and works the same for everyone. Accountability doesn't have to mean assuming guilt. It just means transparency. And if someone is in way too much power and is named, there should be clear and direct answers on whether it's being investigated and why this action is or isn't just taken. Silence from the justice system is what creates that kind of distrust between them and us. Right now, it feels like there's only one system for the regular people and a whole nother one for people in power. that doubt is honestly where we have the issue. If our tax dollars and our money is being funded into these things, the process should be very fair. It needs to be very clear and just visible. It shouldn't really be like a deal about our status or influence that have a part to play in it.
I completely agree. If anyone has any last comments they wanted to say about the files in our discussion so far, please feel free to do so now. Okay. And then so with that, I want to say this was a really heavy topic, and thank you for keeping the dialogue really respectful. I'm glad that we could all have an understanding of one another's perspectives and that we might have learned a little more today about what's currently going on. I thought we would shift focus now to something a bit more relatable to uh, students and a lot of Gen Zers, but would love any input. We want to talk about the current culture of dating and sex. So I did want to start off with how would some of you maybe define what dating and sex culture is like in the US for young adults right now?
First, I always try to define the word date or dating. I think it's the um, potential pursuits of the suitability in another partner for a long term thing. And then everything else kind of goes from there. Suitability meaning, is this person right for me? Am I right for them? Given all the external factors. So that's usually what I think about, at least the definition of dating.
For me, I'd say the culture is a lot different than it had been in the past, and I think a lot of our generation, especially with Gen Z going up to around like later a little bit later 20s now, are not so majority, at least from my perspective, are not so urgent to get into anything concrete uh within their 20s or even later just because it seems that we're in a place of disconnect. And it's strange because we have the most ability to connect with having phones and the internet, but I think it's been somewhat damaging in a way, because our dating and sex culture, I think, can be defined as a lot of internet connection. When you have and um, these dating apps or and just DMing and texting, you can connect with anyone all over the world, but you don't have actually genuine in-person connection. Everything can be kind of rehearsed. And I think I would define dating and sex culture as rehearsed and I would say with unconventional intentions. Um, and in that way saying, people approach things being like, "Oh, I want to even if they like somebody, they're like, "Oh, I want a situationship. I can't commit to anything hands down right now." Or uh the hookup culture of kind of like even if it's like a good connection, we're not going to see each other again. It's a lot of people in an era of working on themselves a lot of the time and kind of forgetting to or not finding it so important in their young adult life to establish long-term relationships and rather prioritize success, which is not bad, just especially with where we are at the world right now, where there's kind of a job market crisis, housing's expensive, tuition's expensive, and we're not making, and Gen Z isn't really making enough money to even fully take care of themselves. How could they focus on a relationship? That's kind of how I view it. Anyone else have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I was going to say if I could define like dating and sex culture for Gen Z today in one word, it would probably just be complicated. It's very, very complicated because of a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, Danny. It's just it's a lot of, I feel like, uncertainty for a lot of Gen Z about, their own future. And so I think, like you said, a lot of people are kind of more focused on themselves, how their personal future is going to look, and how to pursue like their career aspirations, or just even just making enough money to sustain themselves on their own. Um, I've seen a lot of videos on social media about like Gen Z who work 2 or 3 jobs and still have to live with 3 to 5 roommates because they don't make enough money to live on their own and pay all of their own bills and pay for gas in their car and um, so I think a lot of people are just a lot more focused on their own life and figuring out how to live it than they are on sharing that life with a romantic partner, because I think it just adds another, like, I guess, layer of complexity to a person's life to you know um, be with a partner. I think there are a lot of people who can figure it out and who can handle it, but I think there are also a lot of people in Gen Z who are struggling enough figuring out how to take care of themselves that that is enough stress for them.
I totally agree. And it's a lot different than, how it was for past generations when it comes to accessibility to getting your life started at a young age. Another question I was going to ask is, how do you compare our generation um, dating and sex culture to kind of the boomer generation that started the sexual revolution? What were some of the contributing factors that made us so different to them? I know for me personally, I think it has to do with when when I hear my aunts and uncles who are from the boomer generation talk, they're like, yeah, we're able to move out at 18, didn't need a college education, could get a job that paid you well for everything you needed. Where it's not the same today. I mean, I like to joke with the meme that as an English student with my English degree, I became a barista, but with my but with the graduate degree, I got promoted to manager. That's one of my favorite memes because currently that's how life kind of is for people our age. Even though you're paying this all this money for an education and to kind of get ahead, it's and to be able to get into the job market, it's not as easy as it once was, and people aren't getting, you know, savings and insurance until later in life because they can't afford it earlier on. So how could you uh feel so liberated in expressing your sexuality, especially when, a baby could come about from it, that it's a bit frightening to think about. Does anyone else have a perspective on or what they'd like to share in comparison to maybe the boomer generation sexual liberation to today in Gen Z?
Well, I can certainly speak to what it was like to be a boomer back in those days. It was quite something. It was very wide open. I'd say probably too much so. I think, I don't know, it was like this party that we thought was never going to end. And then when college was over and it was time to get a job, we were lucky. We entered a good economy. We were able to get jobs. Uh, but if I could say one thing that I think is advice from old people to younger people, or this old person to you guys, this idea that because life is tough, that means it's too complicated and too stressful to enter into a relationship with somebody else. I would look at it the opposite way. I would say, because life is so tough and because it's so complicated, that could actually justify why you should be in a relationship with somebody, because you have somebody to share this with. It's like two of you against the world instead of you doing it all alone. And I think that's what a good coupleship or relationship or marriage is all about, is working as a team and being in a partnership. And it would be heartbreaking, I think, for your parents and your grandparents to think that you guys might never get married and never have children. I mean, that's sort of the end of the country and the end of the species at some point. And by the way, birth rates are down everywhere across the world, except for in poor countries where they don't have birth control and all that, and they just have a lot of babies. But it's not a long-term healthy trend unless, as some people have posited, they're saying that AI could wipe out a lot of the jobs, And if the population shrinks, well, maybe that's okay because there won't be as many jobs as there used to be, and so therefore maybe we don't need as many people as we used to need. So who knows how it's all going to play out, but I would just say, um, try your best to be open-minded to the idea of having a relationship. Life can actually go better in a good relationship.
Jeff, you brought up a lot of points that I kind of wanted to address, but something that caught my attention was that even with all the stress going on, that it would be nice to have a partner. And I think, like, hypothetically, yes, it would be. Prior to being a part of ONC, I used to have two jobs. I went to school full time and I wanted to keep a social life, but being with a person in a romantic way and being someone like in a more sexual manner was not something that I wanted to put up in the front. That was something that I felt that I had to figure out later with being in school and having two jobs. It was very stressful and I didn't see the importance of it because that is something that I felt like I had to push back because of what was going on economically. I need to, like, my goal would be I want to have a house. I want to have a stable job. I want to be able to have all of these things. But in order for me to do that, I have to line myself up first. For me, it's hard to even imagine myself with someone if I'm not in the position to carry myself forward first.
Of course, any prospective partner might be in the same position himself, herself. Everybody's struggling. You might as well struggle together. I mean, that's just this old man talking to you guys. I think otherwise, what are you going to do? I mean, you know, in my generation, it was the beginning of women's lib, and a lot of women went on to become lawyers and doctors and professionals and all that stuff. And then they didn't get married because they were so busy with their professions. And then one day they kind of woke up in their mid 30s and maybe even 40s and said, "Oh my God, I never got married. I never had children." And so they didn't. And trust me, a lot of them have regrets about that. And a lot of women from my generation thought they could have it all, that they could have the lifestyle they wanted, they could be married, they could have kids, they could have their job. But most women struggled. They decided later that it was okay to admit you really can't have it all. You can't have it all at once, and you can't have it all be good. So I don't know. There are a lot of pressures, but there always have been pressures. So I guess as individuals, we just have to make our best choices.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of, oh, sorry.
If I could ask you guys a question, I mean, do you guys date at all? Is there a dating culture in college or among young people, or is everybody just doing what you just described, which is to hunker down and do your own thing and try to get your act together first before you can even consider such a thing?
There definitely is a dating culture. I wanted to get to that point as well. It is, though, I would say a lot more dating app based. If anyone is actively looking for a relationship, they tend to go on the apps where, a lot of conversation can be rehearsed and whatnot. But I know a lot of people that have had successful relationship out of the dating apps. But I think it ruins the fluidity that once was to meet people out in public because now people are not comfortable approaching other people. Human connection is not made in public spaces. It's made more on the internet than 5 feet apart from one another. Um, that that has also been ruined. And you know, with that saying, with the confidence, people being only confident to DM on the internet, there's no saying that they'll even meet in person because they may chicken out. So I think it's just people's in-person confidence has lowered and because of that, and no one really goes to, I feel like, bars anymore and sees people actually meeting there and going to hang out later or exchanging numbers. It's more of a swipe and approve and gets to read multiple boxes about the person before they even say hello. So I think that's the culture of today, which I can't say I'm really a fan of. I think in-person connection is the best connection. So I think with that being where the internet has gone, and us being young adults and that being the dating culture can be is really damaging.
I think in person is always the best in all circumstances. Job interviews, collections of people like ours here at ONC, dating, working, it's much better face to face. COVID, I think, had a lot to do with shutting the world down. I used to have an office. We rented space. We had people over there. It was lively. It was fun. And then everybody had to go home, and we started working from home. And then Zoom took off, and Slack took off, and all these digital tools that we have. I mean, they're incredibly efficient on the one hand. Look at this organization we have. We have 75 people or so this semester. And somehow or another, we can do it all through Zoom and Slack. But it wasn't that way in the olden days. You needed face-to-face communication, but the communication was better, I think, when you were face-to-face because if you could tell that the other person wasn't quite hearing you right, you could repeat yourself. You didn't have to type out a brand new message, and you could look at something together at the same time. Like if you're designing a page for a website, you could just sit down, chair by chair, side by side, and look at the same screen and say, move this, change that, make this a little bigger, make that a little smaller. And that process moved very quickly. Doing it online is harder, much harder, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And this was also going to bring up, I feel like another thing about the internet having kind of an influence of that is uh couples don't couples are influenced by outside sources a lot more rather than just being together and not worrying about what anyone else thinks. Um the social media has a lot of influence on what, like red flags and think signs you should be wary of and what guys you should go for and shouldn't go for. And I remember this starting, I feel like, in 17 magazines that I would get as an 8-year-old at the grocery store. It was like all this like dating advice and who to go for. And I think it's just gotten worse because anytime you open any social media app, you have memes and things saying and uh people getting involved, and then friend groups nowadays are really involved, I feel like, in relationships and exchanging information. Nothing's really private anymore, which also makes people hesitant to get in relationships because it feels like everyone might be in your business and that it's more, and you're not trying to damage a reputation because so many people are hearing about a private relationship.
Yeah, you're right. Social media has a lot to play in it, and I've definitely fallen into that category myself. The whole, I used to be very self-conscious of soft launching my boyfriend if I had one on social media. There's a lot of new social norms being put in place with specifically like Gen Z taking a part of it, but social media has totally changed the way that like the dating culture is seen now. You don't want to show too much online, but with your friends, you basically exchange all of their information. You'll stalk their pages with your friends, you'll do everything, finding out the most. I know with some of my roommate and I, when there would be people that we want to talk about, there's so many resources to like not only look them up, but look up family. And it can be a very scary, but people just are so not private anymore. There's all this information out. And if you're looking for anyone, all of your business is out there. The whole dating scene online, there's no like, I don't know, there's no privacy. I never see a couple or anyone being able to properly hold themselves in their own like circle or bubble without going completely offline.
I also wanted to say, with the internet being an influence to who we date and a say in our relationship, um, there's the element of politics of people not dating outside of their political party anymore. And it has a lot to do with the way the country is divided. It kind of got that way because of the everyone's ability to discuss on the internet and argue and disagree, that even political stances are so public when you can see what photos people are liking and whatnot. And, I can say from my perspective of watching people date, plenty of girls had opinions, or at least girlfriends I had would make comments if um, someone was dating someone of the opposite political party and would be like, "Wow, that's crazy." I mean, and especially if it's a girl that would not have friends that did not agree with their political party. Like, let's say I had a girlfriend who's a Democrat. She wouldn't be friends with any other girls that were Republicans, but then might date a Republican. And that was like a big whoa thing. That's like more current today, that people don't date outside their political party. And I think it has a lot to do with the internet. And I think it's had a hindrance on dating and sex culture because you don't want to be affiliated with someone that doesn't align with your morals and your beliefs, which people now really attribute to political parties they're a part of.
There's this whole trend on TikTok that I've been seeing where people will look up a person of the opposite like political party and they'll see if they have neutrals and they'll mass unfollow all of their friends or who they thought they were like close with because of their political party, and people are saying, oh, I'm in enemy territory because they're looking at someone else's page who they follow that they just don't agree with.
This is troubling, and I've heard this too before, that women tend to not like Donald Trump in your age cohort, and men tend to really like Donald Trump. So there's a schism there. So how do you overcome that? I think we're going to be in this political divide for a while. Here at our national conversation, we're trying to do something to address that, but this is not going to be an overnight fix. But if men and women can't get together because of their political differences, and if the men are going one way and the women are going another, who is going to get married and have babies, and who is going to keep our country going?
I will say it's a bit difficult because now with the revelations being truer than ever of what Trump is affiliated with and things he has said about women in the past, I didn't as much in the beginning of Trump's first term understand like why anyone would be like, "Oh, I can't date someone from the opposite political party." But if people are still supporting Trump and he's accused of what he's doing right now, it would be like for me who leans more to the left, I would be concerned about the person I was with supporting someone with that reputation and the actions they have done and the things they've said against women. I mean, it was the biggest thing when he was first elected that footage came out that he was like grab him by the
The you
and
know what?
yeah, and we all treated it like, you know what, no one talks like this. Like maybe we need somebody to say something like that. I remember that being said. He's carefree. He just doesn't, he's from the older generation, but he's saying that, and then these actions are coming out of his affiliation with the Epstein files. It's accused, but it looks pretty damning evidence. I mean, I personally couldn't blame any woman for not wanting to be with a man that liked Trump, after with this information coming out.
Yeah, you're looking for if you're looking for a partner that you want to have children with, and you are basically screening them to be the potential partner in your life, the person who's going to be taking care of you when you're older, the person who's going to raise a child with you, the person who's going to help you raise that child into a well-rounded adult. And if there's if there's any concern, um, or if there's any chance that they're supporting or complicit in crimes against children or don't even seem bothered or perturbed by it, I mean, I personally see that as a red flag.
Yeah, I believe if politics could go back to where it was, where our representatives or candidates from each side were more diplomatic and maybe had a better reputation in way of speaking and not affiliated with people like Epstein. I can't say really like the past because if there was Bill Clinton who was very heavily with Epstein affiliated, but it starts with, I think, just making sure we have representatives that have respectful dialogue themselves, like we've learned is so necessary to have political discussions, because I think that will maybe get rid of the gap and the inability to date outside the political parties. And then for our last question of the day, I wanted to ask, do you think money and the job market has a lot to do with dating today?
I personally think that money is a big factor in current relationships. For fun, my friends and I were just looking into getting an apartment and seeing how many of us would need to work, what our salary would be, how much money we're going to put into. We are from SoCal, and just for fun, if we were to rent a house, which would be almost the same as the on average rent, four of us would need to be working at McDonald's full time for us to pay that off. If we were to be in a relationship and just have one partner, we would need to have extravagant jobs to be able to not only just keep the house, but to pay the bills. Then that would go into, if we want to have a kid, furthering those expenses. If we want to have fun, dating isn't just being in a relationship and enjoying these moments and having someone to go through these hardships. It's thinking about it more realistically. And it's a very heavy conversation, but these are things that we need to pay attention to. So I personally think that if I were to take things seriously and move forward with someone, I would need to think how I would have to economically like go keep myself in a job and manage my time with my partner.
I also feel that money and like the job market do have a lot to do with dating culture, just because like there are some people who are more career oriented and who are more focused on making their own money and being successful in their job, and who want to focus on that before they focus on getting into a relationship. Obviously, lack lack of uh, lack of income and issues with the job market are going to hinder any interest in pursuing a romantic relationship. But also for those who are in romantic relationships or who want to pursue romantic relationships and get married, have children, I still think money is also a huge factor, a huge issue, because weddings are expensive a lot of the time. If you want to have a big ceremony with all of your family, all of your friends, it's expensive to get a venue, get a band or a DJ, pay for the flowers, all of the food at the wedding, and then even just paying for the invitations that you send out could be very expensive. And then even more so, the cost that it takes to have a child and raise a child all the way up till they're 18 years old is very expensive. I have classmates from high school who are having children right now, and the first thing that I think when I see them announcing that is, oh my gosh, how are they going to afford that? And then the second thing I think is, but that's great that they're having a child. I'm really happy for them. And I think the fact that the first thing that comes to mind before a congratulations is, how are you going to afford it, shows that money is a huge factor in dating today, because I think money is just a huge factor in everyday life. It's such a huge part of living day to day. It's bound to influence every aspect of your life, I think. So I do feel that money and the job market are huge in dating, just as they are in every other aspect of life.
I really agree with what you said there, Casey. It's like we want to continue the traditions, but we can't afford the traditions. All right, well, I want to say thank you everyone for joining today. I really appreciate all the dialogue, and it was really fun getting to talk to you guys. Thanks so much, and see you next time.